Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cam?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? And we have Frank Bazzani joining us. How you doing, Frank?
Pretty good. How you doing, Trevor?
Doing good. This is podcast number 2 for us, Peek Behind the Curtain. We just sat down and recorded about 2 hours of our forgotten gems from the last generation, or last 6 or 7 years is basically what it amounted to. That Logan also joined us on. That's our Patreon early access episode for this month. So if you are a Patreon supporter at the $1 or above level, you can check out that episode. And then we are sitting down now to discuss kind of just the normal rigmarole of what we've been playing, what we've been watching, all that kind of stuff. So if you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast, share it with your friends, all that fun stuff. And if you are feeling extra generous, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where you'll get access to episodes like that. Just like all of our wonderful monthly Patreon producers did, Pam and Bev Larson, Sherry Starkey, Teresa Wilkinson, and myself, Trevor Starkey. So I think the big topic we're going to have for this week's episode, Frank and I have been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So let's dive into that a little bit. Frank, you were saying you're about...
I think if we could, for a moment, guys, I think we should actually start with Trevor's recent accomplishment. Sorry if I'm throwing an audible here, but I think it's just important to note, Trevor, you played Demon Souls for your extra life.
We will get to Demon Souls. It's on the list. It'll be Assassin's Creed, and then your Destiny 2 stuff, and then we'll wrap up with Demon Souls. I think will be
All right.
the
All right, fair enough.
framework for this show.
I'm just so excited to talk about Demon Souls, and I have not even touched Valhalla, so I have nothing to contribute.
Yeah. I have no doubt there. Valhalla, a game you would probably like with all the lore in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I'm about fucking 90 hours in at this point, probably. You were saying, Frank, you're about 30 hours in. What are your thoughts on Valhalla so far?
I love it. I'm a huge fan of Assassin's Creed in general. Like I've been playing all of these since the very first one. Like I was that guy that buys it every year, and that's why they kept making it. And then they reinvented it, and it honestly, even when that's when I was starting to fall out. And when they came back and sort of reinvented it, it definitely did kind of bring me back in and kind of re-engaged me, and I definitely thought it upgraded the entire quality of the series. And Valhalla is just built off the backs of all of the work they've been building towards this last generation with Origins and then Odyssey. And like I was blown away by Odyssey, and it was like one of my favorite games of 2018. And this just like again just iterates on everything that they did well in Odyssey, and it just kind of evolves it a little bit further. And I just love like pretty much everything that's going on. Like the main story I think is a little bit more like intriguing and deeper than like Odyssey. And so I'm kind of like I like going between like different kingdoms and meeting to these different people and kind of solving different problems, and everything's broken up into like story arcs. So you're just kind of going between arc to arc to arc, and then doing all my side stuff in between. Like they added the raid mechanic where you and your Viking friends can just kind of go in through and raid camps and get supplies for your camp. And like I was a huge fan of like the Assassin's Creed 2 Villa, and then same thing in like Assassin's Creed 3. You had like a homestead you could upgrade, and like that's always a huge thing I'm a fan of, is having like some kind of base to like kind of come back to and upgrade, and that's just done like I think super well here. Um, and I was even kind of talking a little bit before we got on the podcast that like I'm even doing like the high level raids that I shouldn't be going into based on my power level, but I'm still just raiding in and just beating people up and taking their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like there's just something I can't get enough of with that. And that's why even when the main story is like, hey, you're not powerful enough to do these, and I'm like, and I just ignore the main story and I go steal more shit.
Yeah, and if you're good enough at the combat, you can get away with that kind of stuff, because it might take you a little bit longer, and you just have to avoid getting hit a little bit more. But also some of the abilities will make that super easy. Like one of the abilities I got early on was like, hey, if you dodge at the right time, time will slow down. And I was like, cool. That's like that makes that combat way easier when you can time that appropriately. Yeah.
I definitely spam those abilities, and with the way I've specced out in the skill tree, I think I have all the adrenaline slots.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically like build an adrenaline meter, and then you use that meter to use one of your abilities, and it can be whatever ability you kind of picked and assigned. And I think at this point I have 4 slots. So yeah, I try to spam those a lot because those do a lot of damage on some of these higher level people.
Yeah.
And then you're right. And then the rest of the game is just don't get hit, because I've literally in the scenarios where if I get hit once, all my health is gone.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay, I'm basically playing Dark Souls now, because
Yeah.
now I'm in like high level, like you get 1 or 2 hits and try to be aware of everybody around you. And like, I don't know, it's more fun that way for me though.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I'm very much playing through it and just kind of like getting super overpowered. I'm clearing out a whole bunch of the areas on the map. My history with Assassin's Creed is I was talking with Logan about this recently. I came in on Black Flag, really. Like I had picked up the original Assassin's Creed as like a PS3 classic or something like that, and I tried it and I was like, this doesn't really work for me. But at the beginning of the PS4 generation, I was looking for stuff to play and I picked up Black Flag. Really enjoyed my time with it, so I was like, all right, let me boot up my PS3 and give those older games a shot, and played through 1 and then the Ezio trilogy, and then I started Assassin's Creed 3, but never got out of like the intro section of that game because that was what that would have been my 6th straight Assassin's Creed game at the time, so I was super burnt out on it, and I have never, especially those older ones, I've never liked the way it feels, the way it handles, but I liked the story enough, and I liked the, go check off all these boxes and do this stuff kind of gameplay enough that I was into it. And then Unity burnt me out on it, and I basically swore off Assassin's Creed for, like, I didn't play Rogue, I didn't play Syndicate, and I was ready to not come back for Origins, but Yusuf Mageed, who is now over at Ubisoft, I don't remember if he was at Ubisoft at the time. I guess maybe he probably was. Yeah.
Was he at the time?
Was.
Okay.
Yeah, because he started off doing stuff with the he was there.
Yeah.
He was not on the Assassin's Creed team at the time.
Yeah.
And I don't think he is even now, but yeah.
He sung praises enough about the game that I was like, all right, let me give Origins a shot. Really enjoyed Origins. Played through probably like 80% of that game, just never actually finished it. But enjoyed it, and then enjoyed it enough. Still don't always like combat, and I hate traversal a lot of time in those games, which is obviously what they're known for, but it's the frustration of like never going where I want the character to go. You always jump off a cliff and go to the wrong place. And then I kind of played through and completed and platinumed Odyssey, because it was like I constantly said as I was playing through, I was like, I'm playing through it because it's something to do, and I didn't have another game that I was looking forward to at the time. I don't know if I had a great time with Odyssey. It was like a good time. It was like a 7 kind of game for me. And that's kind of what Valhalla is for me as well. It's a great next gen kind of showcase. Like, I love the beautiful vistas and stuff on my PS5. Not that it needs it, but the fact that like that also loads in way quicker has been nice. Like I said,
from being on PS4, I think it needs it.
yeah, I bet. Especially if you're dying on one hit. And yeah, so I'm enjoying it well enough. It is way too big of a game. I'm at like 90 hours in, and the PlayStation 5 like activity for it says like Eivor's Saga is like 80% complete. I'm like, God, I still have like another 20% of this game, but it is. Like, part of that is because I'm doing all of the little episodic arcs that you kind of alluded to. It is you set up camp in England, and then you try and make allegiances with the different territories and the different kind of areas of England there, and each of those is tied to a story arc. So you say, okay, I'm going to go to Oxfordshire, and I'm going to go do that arc of things to get the head of that storyline kind of like allegiant to me, and make an alliance with them so they don't try and mess up with my camp. You're also getting materials, as you said, kind of from ratings to build up your camp and kind of unlock different aspects of your camp, like your general store or ship stuff, your assassin's temple kind of thing. And so I've unlocked probably like 11 or 12 of those story arcs at this point out of, I think, like 15 or whatever. I don't know how big it is. But it's been a nice, like, especially after the initial onslaught and flurry of PlayStation 5 games of Astro's Playroom and Miles Morales and Bugsnax, and then Spider-Man Remastered, like going and playing that, like having something to just kind of like mindlessly go through has been a nice kind of like, okay, I can just kind of like chill and play this out until Cyberpunk comes, or until I decide, okay, we're really coming up on Game of the Year, so I need to sit down with all of the other Game of the Year contenders that I want to sit down with. Um, yeah, it's interesting. How are you playing? Are you because one of the elements is like, hey, you can play as male Ivor, you can play as female Ivor, or you can let the Animus decide. Which one are you? Which one did you choose, Frank?
I ended up going with male Ivor.
Okay.
I had to like think about it for a while. That's the most I've like thought about it in a game probably ever. Like, and I know it like doesn't ultimately like amount to that much, especially in terms of like how the story plays out, because either way you go, they let you do whatever. Um,
And
but
you
I
can
definitely had
switch
to
it at
like
any
sit
point
there and
too.
think. Yeah, yeah. And when I've even thought about doing that because like I do actually ended up I do like the male Ivor, and like in certain moments I think he can be like charming, and in other moments he can be a little bit more like aggressive and ferocious, kind of like a Viking. But then I get to these like weird parts where I don't know if it's the writing or if it's like maybe if it is the male Ivor's performance, but I'm just kind of like I feel like you're acting different than like you normally would have or how like I would do it. But that might be like an overall larger story or like writing problem.
Mm.
But that's why sometimes I kind of sit there and wish and I go, man, I wonder if I would if I would like the Ivor better or if I would like the story better if I pick female Ivor because like I liked Cassandra a lot, and I know like obviously a lot of that had to do with like her performance. So I just kind of there's a lot of times I sit there and wonder, but I ended up going with male Ivor, and I do kind of like him as like a character.
Yeah, it's interesting because I chose the let the Animus decide option, and
Okay.
my entire playthrough pretty much has been female Ivor. Like
Oh,
it's never
interesting.
switched over to male. The only time I've played as like the male Ivor character is, and I don't know if you've encountered this yet, but like at some point you bring the seer, you can unlock the seer's house on
Yeah.
in your camp,
Yeah.
and she'll craft a potion that lets you basically play out like a side story that's happening in Asgard. And so you're basically playing as Odin
Hmm.
in Asgard, and Odin in that iteration seems to be the male Ivor, like that visage. But even that, I
Hmm.
don't know, like it, because it's never like you're still female Ivor, but seeing like the world through Odin's eyes or whatever, and stuff like that.
Are you
It's a
Ivor?
weird.
Are you Ivor the Boneless in this game?
No, so it's
No.
Ivar the Boneless. This is your
Mm,
Eivor. Eivor is the character. Eivor is your character. Ivar the Boneless
okay.
is a prominent side character that you
Yeah.
encounter pretty early on, though.
Yeah,
Um,
because he's one of the biggest. Out of all the sons of King Ragnar, he's the
yep,
biggest and
Mhm.
baddest.
yep, yeah.
And there, yeah, and
Ivar's in there. Uba's in there. I've
mhm.
just been doing stuff
Ooh,
with Halflin, right? Yeah,
dang, Skippy! It's all like they got all the good Viking stuff in there.
yeah.
Vikings on History, by the way, massive shout out to that show.
Hmm.
Entertaining as heck. Shout out to my boy Athelstan. May you
There
rest
you
in
go.
peace.
Yeah. So yeah, like there's a whole bunch of that. Like the side structure of or the side stories of the games, is
Dang,
as
I kind of want
opposed
to play
to
this game now. It's got homesteading and Viking
yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
in it.
I mean, you'd probably
Dude, no, I
Shoot.
think you'd like it.
yeah, you'd probably get a kick out of it. Um,
Mhm. There's
the
also home gangs.
yeah,
There's what?
there's
Home gangs.
home gangs. There's flighting. So you're like
Yeah. Oh yeah, the fighting's fun. I like the
yeah,
fighting.
flighting is, I mean, I remember this making waves like when it got announced and being like, that seems stupid, but it's basically like rap battles that you have with
Mhm.
other Vikings, where
This sounds awesome.
you spit verses at one another, and so yeah, somebody will kind of like spit a rhyme at you, insulting you, trash talking you, and then you kind of have to like finish the rhyme both in meter as well as like matching the ideas that they're bringing to the table. Um, as the tutorial
Hells
kind of
yeah.
You
introduced, like I called you dumb and you threatened to kill me, so maybe don't go that extreme with it. Was basically like it was like, oh okay, so I should have just called you dumb back, but with a clever rhyme kind of thing, because it's like it's the opponent will start the rhyme and you basically pick from like one of three options on a timed kind of thing. So but yeah, it's and that if you do that more and more, it ups your charisma level, so you get like special dialogue options in certain cases that will, hey, you can pay this guy $200, or you can use your charm and charisma to, get out of it for free or get whatever you're looking for free, kind of thing. So yeah, it's
So
a
what you're
fun little
telling me is that
side thing.
when I start this game, I need to immediately just become the greatest MC England has ever seen.
Exactly. Yeah.
Basically, yeah, because that's kind of what I did. Because since it increases your charisma, and I'm all about that, especially like getting those extra dialogue options to get around things and not have to pay people, and even just convince people to do things they wouldn't otherwise do. So I'm all about that. And I was always worried, like, okay, because there's like levels of the charisma, and I don't want to get to a point where I can't choose an option because I'm not a certain high enough level.
Mm-hmm.
So at one point when I was listening to a podcast, I just like looked, I was doing side stuff, and I went up and found every single flighting I could go do, and I just like went and did all of them. So there's even, you can look at my map, there's a point where I just sailed into really high level territory, ignored everything else, and I went and beat a guy in a flight, and then I went back home, and I just ignored everybody else on the way there.
Nice.
But
Hells
everybody will
yeah.
know Ivar is the best MC in England.
Yeah. So yeah, there's that. You can have like drinking contests in the various campsites and stuff. There's is it old
Orlong?
Orlog? Yeah, it's a dice
Orlong,
game.
yeah.
Yep.
That's pretty fun too.
It's pretty fun. Yeah. Lots of fun little side things that you can do in a lot of the different encampments. So the
Okay,
game.
explain to me, how is the, like, I understand from, like, honestly, let's be real here. Odyssey kind of took the idea of the assassin thing and basically was just like, you thought you knew about assassins because Assassin's Creed Origins was really tied into that. But let's go ahead and do this entire thing now where we introduce basically gods and, like, going through Hades and stuff like that. Like, how does the assassins kind of tie in? Like, are you start off already being an assassin,
No.
or are you being brought into it eventually? Like, is it part of the English stuff
So
that you deal with?
You're never, at least in my time, you're never technically brought in, but your shield brother Sigurd is basically has been away fighting in wars, fighting in England, stuff like that, and he met up with a couple of characters, Bossum and Hytham, I believe, are their names, who are hidden ones. And he met with them, I think, in Constantinople, so it's kind of like carrying over from like the Ezio era of things or whatever.
Because I think they're supposed to be
It
part
wouldn't.
of Altair's like guild, even though
Oh,
they're not
it's Altair.
Altair.
Oh yeah.
They're
Yeah.
Altair
This
tie-in,
is
not Ezio. I was like,
yeah,
Ezio doesn't happen for
Yeah.
like hundreds
Right,
of years,
yeah.
bro.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm messed up on the chronology there. Yeah.
You're okay, but but Altair
Sorry,
was in
I've been-
Constantinople, as we learned in
Yes.
Assassin's Creed Revelations.
Yes.
I've been there since the beginning, so I'm like way too into the lore.
Yeah, that was like I played through the Ezio trilogy and they all kind of blurred together a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
So yeah,
Unity broke me. I
like,
couldn't go back after Unity.
Yeah, that section of Constantinople I'm thinking of from Revelations from the Ezio trilogy. But anyway, so they come back to Norway with Sigurd, and kind of like Eivor is Sigurd's like right hand man or woman, and like best warrior in the camp kind of thing. So they, at Sigurd's request, kind of train her on like assassinations and stuff, and give her like the cloak and kind of train her in the ways of the Hidden Ones without ever saying like, "Hey, you should join our order." But Hytham is kind of the apprentice, and he will set up shop in your homestead, and kind of set you up much like you have an Order of the Ancients, like rundown of people, just like in Origins and Odyssey, where it's like, okay, you'll find clues either through the story or through different areas that will reveal members of the Order to you, and they will task you with assassinating all of them. You can find hidden bureaus throughout England of when the assassins were there during the Roman occupation of England. So you kind of, but like if you go into any of those bureaus, it's basically like at some point assassins were basically called out of England and called back home. So all of the bureaus are abandoned and left decrepit and stuff like that. But you're tasked with like finding pieces of the Hidden Ones codex from those.
Sick.
So that's that's how it's loosely tied to the Assassin's arc.
Well, it sounds more like
the
because there's the assassin ones, there's the assassins, the assassin, which is I believe that's the descendants of Bayek's group, and then the hidden ones are the descendants of his wife's group, right? Because they split.
Maybe it's I don't I did not finish Origins as you recall.
That's
so,
true.
So I don't know. Yeah, but also the kid merchant from Origins is in this. He sets up shop at your camp, and it's still like the same kid.
What?
So it's like, are you immortal like Cassandra kind of was?
What's is it possible that it's an animus thing?
It could be,
maybe.
Because I mean,
he tells stories though of like Origins. Like he will like you'll be walking by the camp at one point, and he'll be telling stories to like the children in your homestead, and he'll be telling the story of Bayek, and I always forget her name. But the characters from Origins, which makes sense because the team behind this game was the team behind Origins. So it's just it's a weird little thing that's not really explained of why that merchant is the same kid from 800 years prior or whatever. But whatever.
It's not explained, but I did think it was funny because like when you start the conversation with him, you're talking to like some guy that works for him who's like an adult man.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Oh, this is my boss," and it's like this kid, but he's like, obviously we know because he was in Origins or whatever. He's like 1,000 years old, and so he's like when Ivor calls him a kid. I just thought that was like,
we lost you for a second there, Frank.
Sorry. I just thought that was like a funny interaction because in that interaction, Ivor calls him like a kid, and he's like offended, and he's like, "I'm no kid." Like he's like 1,000 years old, and he like has all this knowledge, and like he has all the other merchants that like run throughout the city that all work for him, and they can give you contracts. And like I just thought that the whole thing was really fun because it took a while. Like when he showed up, it didn't make sense to me, but when he started telling the Bayek story, it immediately clicked that that's the same vendor kid from like that. And I think he was in Odyssey too, because I think he was in one of the port towns.
Weird.
I didn't remember him from Odyssey, and when I looked him up in like the Assassin's Creed wiki, he's only mentioned as being in Origins and this. So yeah, and even the wiki's like it's unclear if it's the same kid or if it is like a title that is passed on, through the generations or whatever, and just happens to look like that kid. But yeah, so there's like a lot of weird little tie-ins to kind of both the new and old. Like there's I don't know, have you left England yet, Frank?
No, not since I got there.
Okay.
I just got back from Sussex, and then I headed to Essex, like pretty much right before we started recording. So like I still have like a long ways to go.
Okay.
And then real quick to your point earlier, where you're like, man, this thing's real long. I'm already at the point where I'm like, damn, this thing's kind of long, and I'm like 50% of the way where you're at.
Yeah.
So I'm like I think they might be going.
Is King Alfred in this game?
So there is a part that I was gonna say. Yeah, King Alfred is like the big bad.
He's the big bad of the game.
Yeah.
I mean, pretty much.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I believe
I've not encountered him in the game yet, but every time you're fighting against people, they're like being backed by King Alfred. So he's probably going to be like the head of the ancients in the order timeline in the order hierarchy. That's my guess. I haven't gotten there yet, but yeah, he seems to be like Templar extreme in this game.
That's not surprising.
And especially like based on like the trailers and stuff that came out that were like, hey, like the English king is talking about how bad the Vikings are, while we're seeing like Vikings being nice family people in that like first cinematic trailer.
Well, the Great Heathen Army, which is led by Ivar the Boneless and his brothers, do go to war against King Alfred because they're trying to take control of England, and King Alfred unites the rest of England against the Great Heathen Army and defeats them.
So I think Cameron may have just spoiled the ending.
I'm sorry, history exists.
Again from history.
Because right now I'm trying to gather everybody to take over England.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's how they get us, by doing the flip.
It's definitely like I'm at the point where it seems like I'm I have a mission line with Halfdan Ragnarsson that will potentially be like, okay, let's bring our forces together to go face off against Alfred. We just fought Pix north of the Hayden's
Yeah.
Wall. No, whatever the wall in the north of England or whatever. And yeah, so it's it definitely is like pulling from that era of time. One other aspect of the game, so like side quests are more or less done away with. They basically take the form of the different arcs in each of the different territories that you're going through. And so instead of that around the world, there's 3 different icons that you can find. There are wealth icons, which are going to be like either upgrade materials or new equipment, or just like treasure chests and stuff like that. There are or I guess like abilities, new abilities like scrolls that will unlock skills and stuff. There are artifacts, which are like here's like a treasure map that will take you to someplace else, or here's a mushroom trip that you can go on and do like a hallucinogenic thing.
That was wild when I just
when
stumbled
you
into
found
that.
the
Like I
first
just
one
keep
of those,
finding everything.
yeah.
Yeah, and then I teleported like 40 feet into the sky.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, well, yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah. And then there are mysteries, which are like they're very short form side quests where it'll be like, okay, like you'll go to a blue point on the map and somebody will be there, and it'll be like a guy who's like, oh yeah, I have like a mean like right cross or something like that. Nobody can withstand a punch from me, and you'll face off against him, and if he does connect with you, it's like a one hit and you're down. And so you have to like parry him or whatever, and knock him out. And when you do, you get a treasure from that or something like that. Or, famously, there are some really stupid ones like, oh, go find these viper eggs for this lady in a sewer, and when you like go and collect them all for her by like killing little snakes around, she farts, and it's like, why was this like a side thing? Okay, whatever.
Well, did you hear about the other side of that?
What?
Because the
Maybe.
reason she wanted the reason she was in the sewer and she wanted the eggs was
Mm-hmm.
because the guards had put her in there and they were like
Oh yeah.
peeing on her from
Oh yeah.
above.
Yeah.
So she wanted the eggs to fuck with them from above. And if you go up there, I think they're like passed out because of her fart.
Yeah, they're either passed out or they're like, "Oh my god!" It's like you see like the green smoke coming up through the
What the
grates or
heck?
whatever. Yeah, it's definitely like it's
The side quests get weird.
yeah,
Go ahead.
but there are also some like there's an area in the north of like it's Sherwood Forest, and so I encountered 2 things that were very clear references to Robin Hood or the Merry Men. I encountered one that was like a spoof on Alice in Wonderland, or not a spoof, but like a reference to Alice in Wonderland. It's like, okay, these are just weird little nods to, I guess, like English culture or whatever. I'm almost
King
waiting
Alfred.
to find like the wardrobe that takes me onto like a snowy plain with
There
an
you
ice
go.
queen or whatever.
That'd be awesome.
King Alfred is also known as King Alfred
that-
the Great, by the way, for this very reason. He beat the Great Heathen Army.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's definitely a period of English history I didn't know much about. Like I feel like my English history like begins at the Magna Carta. Even like one of the things I was like when I was like going through Canterbury, I was like, when did the Canterbury Tales get written in relation to
Way
this?
later.
It's like, oh, they're not gonna happen for 400 years later or something like that. So I was like, okay, well, I shouldn't expect that, or I should maybe expect like allusions to that. If you got super deep like reading. I could not find any, but yeah, it's Assassin's Creed. It's there's a million of those kinds of little side missions, and the fact that they're like one little thing, go here and be done with the thing, makes them very bite size, and so a ton of my playtime has just been like clearing out the map and being like, okay, well that's my next objective point, and if I zigzag a little bit, I can hit like 3 or 4 different like things on the way there. So yeah, let me just do that and kind of knock them out as I go. So that's probably why I'm super over leveled and everything for where I'm at in the game, but and also probably why it's taken me so long to get through. Any other closing thoughts on it, Frank?
Yeah, I kind of agree with a lot of what you said there because I definitely like the mysteries, and I think that how they're a little bit more bite-sized. Like I love that they're not like fetch quests. Like it's not like some dude that's like, hey, can you go get me whatever that's on the other side of the world and then come back here
Yeah.
for it? It's like
It's almost
whatever you
always like
stop and talk
right
to
in
them,
that
it's
area.
yeah, like whenever you're gonna stop and do it, it's just gonna be in that area, and it usually takes like less than 5 minutes just to just knock out.
Yeah.
And usually though, like kind of like we've been talking about, like I think they're fun and like interesting. Like I haven't done too many, but the ones I have been have all been interesting. I haven't seen this Viper Egg one, but I've heard multiple people talk about this now.
Yeah.
In terms of like encountering it, the one that I thought was really funny was the first one I ever did, which the first town you go to that's not like your home base, and this is before you even get to England, and like there's a woman arguing with her husband like outside their hut, and it's about how like their relationship is falling apart because like he can't satisfy
Oh
her
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah.
and
they
and
need
like
to
as you talk to her,
they need the excitement of a Viking raid to get
yeah,
the juices flowing. Yeah.
so I'm just like in these people's house smashing all their shit with my axe and like screaming, and I like set it on fire, and then they're like super thrilled. And then I also thought it was kind of a fun like tongue-in-cheek joke at the end where she asks Ivor to come to bed with them, and then my Ivor, I'm sure it's probably the same dialogue, was like, no, no, thank you, but I will help myself to your chest because she gave him the key to like their trunk.
Hmm.
And I was like, I just thought that was like a stupid, funny little joke. But I was like, wow, see, this little side quest took like 2 minutes. We had some fun, and then I'm gonna go off on my next adventure.
Yeah.
And like I like that a lot more than even just like in Odyssey when it's like, hey, can you bring me that bread from all the way across the world? And I'm just like, okay, like
Yeah, there are a few things that'll be like there are like altars scattered around the map where it's like, okay, to get the points, the skill points from this mystery, it's, leave 50 ore here or something like that.
mm,
And there are a couple of those where it's like leave 10
fish
trout.
and
And I'm
shit.
like,
Like
I have
yeah,
two of that kind of trout. So I guess I'm going to have to like do a whole bunch of fishing if I really want that skill point or something. I've encountered a few of those where it's like,
mm,
I'll know now not to try and like sell off that fish if I, find myself just fishing somewhere. But yeah, for the most part, it's manageable and well within that area. There was one I've encountered that was like a chest where it was like you had to find 3 keys to unlock it, and the keys were scattered like around the surrounding countryside at certain
mhm.
locations. And so I was like, all right, this is the most work I've had to do for any of these like chests. This better be a good thing. I was like a single upgrade material. I was like, well, that like whatever. It was like a
Just
high quality
worthless.
upgrade material that you need for like the top tier armor or whatever. But it was still like
Mm.
I've got like bags of those at this point. I don't know if I needed to go to 3 other locations on the map for this, but whatever. I was in the neighborhood, so yeah. Like it is very much we just finished our big 2 hour conversation on Forgotten Gems. This is not a game that's going to be forgotten anytime soon because Assassin's
Yeah.
Creed, but like this is the epitome of like if this cracks my top 10, it's going to be in the lower half of my top 10 for the year. It is a, peak 7.5 kind of game for me of like it's good. I'm having a good enough time with it, but if there was like anything else I would rather be playing, I would probably just drop this and head over to that.
For me, I think it's a great game, and like especially coming from the Assassin's Creed franchise, like I definitely think you still are right with a lot of what you're saying, but I just still think it's like it's just so fun. Like I just every time I'm playing it, I just am having fun for the most part, and like when I'm in combat and like it's so cinematic and so fun, and I just like that's like there's a lot of praise I definitely have for it, and I think I for me like if I had to score it even where I'm at, it would probably be like 8.5, maybe like 9, because I really like the game, and I think it's good for a lot of people to jump into even if you don't finish it. But yeah, one of my bigger problems with it, even though I know we're wrapping up, is like I think it doesn't do onboarding like into the game very well because it's huge and there's a million moving pieces. And as I've said, I'm somebody who's been playing these since day one,
Hmm.
and I'm still just like figuring things out 30 hours into the game that I should have known 30 hours ago.
Yeah.
And it's like one of my things, and this is probably just gonna make me sound stupid, but it's like with the fishing line, it never explained to me that I had the fishing line. Like it tells you you have that wheel that does stuff and everything in the wheel does stuff, but I didn't like systematically stop and just read every option that was in the wheel. So when I got to something and it was like fish, there was no fishing line there. So I ended up fishing with like the bow and arrow by like you can do the pulse and it'll show you where the fish are and you can
Yeah.
just arrow the
Oh
fish.
yeah, I do a
And I
ton of
think
that
it's
too.
faster than
Oh yeah.
yeah, because like I think it's faster and I had more fun doing it that way. And it but then 25 hours into the game I found there was a fishing line in my inventory the entire time and I've still never used it.
Yeah, it gets introduced somewhat passively, like when you unlock the fishing shop in your homestead. Like you go talk to the
Mhm.
kid and he'll kind of like tell you, oh yeah, you have a fishing line, you can go fish off the dock or whatever. And I think he'll like ask you to get certain type of fish for your because like if you turn in certain fish, you'll get like an item in
Yeah.
return kind of thing. So I think that's where it gets introduced. But even there, like Eivor says something to the effect of like, "Oh, I'll just like I like fishing, you know, with bow and arrow." Actually, I think this actually gets introduced back when you're still in Norway. That idea,
Okay.
where I think that line kind of comes up of like, yeah, you can fish or you can, you know, yeah, just kind of hunt with a bow and arrow. Um,
Cause
yeah.
I just like totally missed any mention of it and like I built the fishing hut and then like he was like, hey, well you can bring us fish and then like I was like, and I had to do the fishing once before that because of like the mission in Norway. I think there's like they force you to do it once or twice, but both times I just ended up doing the bow and arrow and I didn't know what the hell to do and it never told me what to do.
Yeah.
But there was like one time I got to a puzzle I had never been to before where I needed to shoot the barricade off a door by shooting an arrow through the window,
Oh yeah.
and I had never encountered one of those puzzles before. So a pop-up literally popped up in the game and said, "This is what you're supposed to do. Like you haven't encountered this before. This is a puzzle mechanic that you should be aware of." And I was like, "Oh, okay." God knows why they can't tell you when I walk up to a lake for the first time that I can pull out a fishing rod. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just there's weird things like that. Like, there's just weird things where I'm like, it feels like some things are just stitched together and could have been improved upon. But that's probably the overall narrative of just like Assassin's Creed in
Yeah.
general.
Yeah.
But overall, I still think it's a great game. Most of the things I would draw against it like that are probably considered like nitpicking.
Yeah, it is very much like these games are always like, hey, this is a game designed to be your only game, maybe for a
Yeah.
few months, because we're going to put so much content in there for you. So if you're trying to play through it in like a few weeks, like I am, or something like that, it's like way too much for a game like that.
Yeah.
And it like the completionist in me is looking at it and like, am I gonna try and get the platinum on this one too? Maybe we'll see. And I'm just like, but I don't like. I think I'm very getting close to that point where I'm just like, I'm just gonna mainline the rest of this stuff. I'm like way overpowered
Mhm.
for even the highest level areas on the map at this point, so I can probably just kind of burn through that. But one of the things it did, just as a closing thing, I started to head down this path and then didn't. But like one of the reasons I asked, like, if you've left England, is because at some point you do, and very much it kind of made allusions to other games in the franchise of like
Mhm.
future things that happen in the timeline of things. And I was like, okay, that's so it got me interested in maybe revisiting certain other elements as a result of that. So it definitely ties into, you know, classic Assassin's Creed as well as the Origins and Odyssey era. But clearly, gameplay wise, it is mostly driven by the latter two.
And
So yeah.
that's some that's something I enjoy at least about how they like tie them together and it is kind of like a whole universe because they've been doing that since the beginning and that's as again somebody who plays all of them
Hmm.
that's something that I like because it's like that's like one of the things they're like over here speaking to me. So I'm looking forward to that now if they're going to continue to drop hints and more little things in there.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like the modern day storyline stuff?
Back in the day I was a huge fan of it like with Desmond and like I know everybody hated it and like I'm not even saying great things about Desmond himself but like I was a fan of the story they were telling and I thought it was really intriguing and I loved seeing it build from game to game to game
Hmm.
but since they got rid of all of Desmond and like that like they did that like 10 years ago almost now they totally lost the modern day story and now I think the modern day shit is like pretty bad and I'm glad they continue to just like scale it back because I don't have any problems with the person you play as is like Layla
Hmm.
but it's like I feel like this the modern day story is just nothing and it's going nowhere and like there's just really no point to it and I also don't love the aspect that like the assassins are all but basically defeated. I get that's kind of the underdog portion they're maybe going for, but it's like throughout the entirety of history, they've been like these equally sided organizations, and now suddenly the Templars have just basically flat out won, and there's like no coming back from that, even though they continue to try. I don't know. I'm sorry. I guess I have too many thoughts on the modern day story.
It's interesting because like I also am like I guess like I'm not an avid defender because I'm not an avid defender of anything Assassin's Creed, but like I have never held the this disdain that a lot of people do towards the modern day stuff. And one of the things that fascinates me is like even though that they killed off Desmond years ago, they continue to bring Nolan North back for new stuff. Like there's audio files in this game that's Nolan North like coming in and doing recording sessions of like when Desmond was, a thing, and talking to some of those characters and stuff. So it's just like, weird that they like that they wrote it that way, but they still, care about that character enough to keep bringing him back, and keep, making references to it and alluding to it. But yeah, it is very much like, okay, you're sailing off to England now, so that's going to take a week. Let's pull you out of the Animus. You get like your little bit out of the Animus, and in the rest of my gameplay, that is the only time I have had to come out of the Animus. So I feel like they've kind of like it's there to remind you that this is all still happening in the modern day, but it's also like it's whatever you want it to be. Like that can be you can be done with that section and back into the game, immediately, or you can go through and read through some of the the lore texts and stuff that are setting up and talking about like what happened in the lead up to this, and some of the stuff clearly happened happened in the Odyssey DLC that I never actually sat down and played, because like some of the stuff that gets mentioned and alluded to is like, oh, that is not where I left this character last time around. Okay, cool, whatever. But I do appreciate that. I think it also canonizes that Cassandra is the canon character, from Odyssey.
Well, who played the other one? Whoever played the other one, the male one.
75% of people. Logan and I talked about this
for
recently.
real.
Yeah, like there was a
75% of people played Alexio and
there was a Games Radar
instead of Cassandra, but Cassandra's the
like I mean, gamer audiences just defaulted to the male character, I guess. But yeah, everybody in like our circles played as Cassandra, but as the
I was like, I don't know anybody who played as Alexio.
The broader Assassin's Creed fan base, it's the same people that only play FIFA or Call of Duty or Madden every year. It's those kinds of people maybe. But so apparently 75% of Ubisoft people or of people played Odyssey as Alexios, and only 25% played as Cassandra. But yeah, like the documentation, like because you have the staff from
I don't know
the
if
last
it's
game, and they definitely like say like I got the staff from Cassandra, not I got the staff from Alexios. So yeah.
No, I'm glad that if anything they can like canonize that, because she's definitely I think the best way to go in that game. And like she was like there's too many I have too many nice things to say about Cassandra in Odyssey, and that's like that almost single-handedly is what got me to pick female Ivor. I just ended up with like going with this male Ivor and kind of like some of the story elements they do, and the way it's just kind of like this thing about like this brotherhood of like Vikings and even like some family stuff and like maybe some dishonor. I really like the idea of being this like son that has to fix it, and you have your Viking brothers, but I mean the story is the same if you pick the female version. And sometimes I think like I wish I would have picked that version, because I think maybe it would have been more fun or more interesting.
I mean, like I said, you can switch it at any time. If you decide for the next 60 hours you want to play as female Ivor, you can. The person who kind of like manages your war table, Ranvi, who's Sigurd's wife.
I love her.
Like she looks close enough to Cassandra that I thought like there was going to be some reveal at some point that it was Cassandra in disguise. But that has not come about, so I imagine that's not going to be the case. But yeah, it was interesting.
Well, that's what made me realize that like the Ubisoft must have like some kind of Sims like character creator where they're just picking parts of people and putting them together, because she literally has the same hair as Cassandra, and then the face is a little bit different, but it's still close. So I'm like, somebody was just picking pieces and putting together like characters, and they ended up with Cassandra like exactly. I just thought it was like funny.
Well, enough about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We will keep playing it and maybe have a check-in somewhere down the line. But Cameron, let's throw it over to you to give us some Destiny 2 updates as you continue.
I'm on this podcast. What?
As you continue, you chimed in and you got very excited about some of that Valhalla stuff we talked about. So as I thought you might. But yeah, tell us about your updated Beyond Light thoughts.
Yeah.
Where you
So
at?
I don't think.
When you sitting down doing the raid, all
Yeah.
that fun stuff.
So we're doing the raid this week. We were hoping to get to it this past week, but after careful consideration from those who'd already gone through the raid, they're like, "Hey, try to get it to as close as 12:40 as you can." So we postponed it to this upcoming week. I'm very excited for it. Still don't know what it looks like going in blind on it, but still very excited. I will say that once again, the game continues to impress me with its week-to-week content. Just little new things every week. Week 2 brought brought a bunch of more unlocked stuff. Week 3 brought the raid. Week 4 brought the Wrathborn stuff. Like, there's been some really good stuff coming out. And now that they've made Lost Sectors produce, like, you can do a harder mode version of it to get like high quality epic loot. It's been very, very not epic loot, sorry, legendary loot. It's been good. Like, it's got its hooks into a lot of people. It's a lot of fun. It's been pretty great. Like, I have to say, I have really, really been enjoying it. I have not been playing it this as much this past week just because my mind and my focus has been on other things between my new job and
The holiday.
and try to get the holiday and getting my PC fixed up.
Yeah.
So the trials and tribulations of that long odyssey
Of being a
continue.
PC gamer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just being a PC gamer without a PC.
I think last time we talked about
been
Beyond
hard.
Light, like the next day I saw something about like, oh, there's a new loot cave. Did you play around with that at all?
No.
Or no?
Loot caves are for the week. And also, I didn't find out about it because I wasn't playing Destiny 2 that day, and they patched it
until
out.
after it was patched. Yeah.
Well, no, I heard about it before they patched it, but I'm like, they're just gonna patch it out. And besides, people are like, it's a new loot cave. It's like, but people forget the loot cave in Destiny 1 was needed because the drought of endgame content that could give you good loot was non-existent in original Destiny. There was no consistent way of getting high quality loot back then. Because RNG that was a dark time. It was a dark time before RNGs came to us, and those of us who were at the mercy of Rahul, who is the engram guy in the tower. There's a reason my old guild or clan was called Rahul's Rejects, because of like we all shared the past trauma of like terrible stories of like having a
Having a purple
legendary
decrypt
engram only
as blue or whatever. Yeah.
having a decrypt as like white. Decrypt is like just garbage. It was brutal. It was a brutal time.
Yeah.
But I have to say that I've really been enjoying it. It gives you incentive to play a little bit every day, but honestly, I sometimes let these things stack up to a couple of days. Go in, clear stuff out, go up light a couple levels, and then bounce. We're planning on, once we get the reset on Tuesday, to start looking at what ideally we're going to be running for the raid. Very excited for it. Ready to get back into the raid with the boys. Give it another raid, another go. So very excited for that.
Very cool. Yeah, I saw a lot of the buzz around the raid the day it had come out and the day after. A lot of people being like, "This is the best thing Bungie's ever done." So I hope that plays out and pans out and turns out to be the case for you as well.
It'd be really hard to. The complexity and difficulty of the Last Wish raid is by far one of my favorite things that I've ever done in Destiny. The Future raid was not as impressive. It was cool, very different kind of raid, and and then Garden of Salvation was just a different kind of raid as well, very cool. But I don't think the levels of complexity that you get from The Last Wish, I don't know if we'll ever get that same level of difficulty and complexity and teamwork required out of that, because it is by far one of the most challenging things I've ever done as a gamer, period. But at the same time, overcoming it and defeating, going through that entire process for the Last Wish raid is still like one of the best times I've ever had in Destiny or any other game. It made for the Forsaken DLC expansion launch. It was just I don't know if it'll ever be beaten. It definitely stands up there in my opinion with like the Taken King expansion from Destiny 1. So
Cool.
that being said, yeah, it's cool. I'm very excited to get in there and get into it. I still think that there's a lot of really cool stuff going on outside of that. There just seems to be like new things going on every week. That's great, and I'm having a ton of fun with it. But right now it's mostly just kind of this slow grind until reset, and then I'll probably get that last bump up to the 1240 range and be ready to have an easier time in the raid.
Have they given a timeline on when Vault of Glass returns? They're going to be 2021?
No, they have not. Probably be 2021. Vault of Glass is still a little bit ways off. Yeah, we probably won't get that until the next like content drop in spring.
Mm-hmm.
Vault of Glass coming back is going to be great.
Yeah. Cool. All
Yeah.
right.
There was that news. Yeah, are you going to bring up the news story?
I mean, I wasn't, because this isn't really the news show. But if you want to talk about it a little bit, you can.
Yeah, because I don't know why you guys would cover it on the podcast that a Destiny player isn't usually on.
Yeah. No. We would not cover it otherwise. But if you want to talk to it, feel free.
I'll talk to it right now because I just want to kind of put a kibosh on anybody who might be saying anything different about it or saying like this is coming out of nowhere. Like people have been playing with the idea and thinking about the idea that a news article came out because a Bungie scenario writer came out and said yes, Saint 14. Wait for you to swallow, Frank, so you don't do a spit take. But Saint 14 and Osiris are in fact inter. I don't know if it's interspecies so much as because Saint 14's an exo. He's a robot man. He's a robot man, and Osiris is a human man. And what that looks like as far as love goes, I don't know. But they are lovers. They are lovers, and they have a strong bond and relationship that they've built up over centuries. As immortals, it's
love is love.
Love is love, man. Love is love between a man and his robot man. The only thing I will say about this is Saint 14's really, really cool. I love Saint 14 as a character. He has like this thick Russian accent. Super cool. Love him to death. He could do so much better than Osiris. Osiris sucks so bad. He's even worse now.
I think we covered that last time you were on, your Osiris hate.
Yeah, Osiris came back in the lore, and it's just like, why?
And that was why. That was really the only reason I brought it up to you before we started recording, was because I had seen the headline of like Bungie rep confirms, 2 gay lovers or whatever in this, and the thumbnail was Osiris, and I was like, oh, I wonder what Cam's thoughts are on this.
My thoughts are, like, Saint 14, like, don't get me wrong, Osiris did almost break the universe to preserve Saint 14's life and bring him back. Props to that. Like, good on him. Like, this proves, like, has he earned a relationship with Saint 14 despite being a total otherwise asshat of a human being? Just the absolute worst? Yes, he has. But it's kind of like, these people, it's a good positive relationship. They care about each other. They love each other. But one of them just sucks. We all know those couples. We all know the couple where there's like one person who's in a couple. It's like, why are you with that person? And then you see that, they elevate, like that person elevates them, makes them feel good, fulfills their needs, and also like a good partner with them, sure. But the other person just sucks. And there's nothing you can do about that. Like, would I go to a dinner party at Saint 14 and Osiris's pad? Probably. Like, Saint 14 would probably definitely make it a good time. But Osiris would be like, be no Osiris things. And it's like, oh, great, Osiris, did you break this for the 13th time that I'm going to have to fix it for you? Osiris? You suck.
I love how much if Osiris and Cameron actually met, they would just be the same damn person. But okay.
Fuck you.
Moving
That's
on
not true.
to...
It has been confirmed by many people that I am, in fact, Asher Mir. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. I don't know if that's better or not, but...
he calls Zavala Vuvuzela, and that makes him the best.
I don't remember who Asher Mir was, which one they were on the...
He was the Awoken on Io. He had the robot. He had the Vex arm. Because his arm slid into the Vex milk for too long.
Yeah, I don't remember. Was he the crazy one?
Yeah, he was a crazy one.
Because I don't even remember which one Io was at this point, really.
Yellow Planet.
That doesn't help. Was it the one with the Vex like pyramid on it, the Pyramidion?
Yes.
Okay. So Asher Lev is the cranky guy right at the beginning of that level. Okay, cool. Anyway, let's move over to last topic of the show, Demon Souls, which, yes, I did sit down and do some Demon Souls. Originally intended to do a 12-hour stream, but got broken about 8 hours in by a combination of fuck that game and lack of sleep. But up until that, like for the first 6.5 hours, I was having a good time with it. I was tracking about every hour and a half I was beating a boss. And so I guess the first time I didn't hit that like hour and a half I've beaten a boss section of the game, I was like, fuck this, I'm done. But
you were also a very tired boy. You were
I was very
boy.
tired, yeah. But yeah, it was definitely a better onboarding experience than Bloodborne had been. Going through that, I felt like I actually knew what was going on, what I was getting into. It definitely, like, my frustrations with Soulsborne games still largely rely on how obtuse a lot of that stuff is, in that if I hadn't had Silent Angel in the chat, like saying, here's where you need to go, you need to go talk to this person because that's the monumental. The game doesn't tell you that. The game doesn't tell you where that person is. It just kind of says, like, there's a little cinematic basically pointing you to go up and go up there and talk to the monumental. And it's like, okay, where the fuck's the like? I ran around the place, and finally they had to be like, hey, this is it's the kid on one of the floors there or something like that. And I was like, how long would I have spent running around that place trying to find that?
A very long time. Knowing you, a very long time.
Yeah, it's infuriating.
You didn't even notice the entire row of children that were there the first time around.
I did not. No, I thought they were like little statues or something like that. I did not realize they were dead children on the ground there.
Dead children statues that were at one point alive.
Yeah,
and one of them is.
Yeah, so that kind of stuff is the stuff I hate about these games, and there's still a shit ton of that. But the combat and like, because I knew a little bit of what to expect from having played Bloodborne, I definitely felt like I was better positioned this time around. I didn't die nearly like with Bloodborne. It took me 4 hours to beat the Cleric Beast, and then another 4 hours to beat Father Gascoigne. And I hated
Father Gascoigne still sucks.
I hated every bit of those 8 hours. This I fought through. By the time I got to Phalanx, which was the first boss, I had died twice. Once being like the time you're supposed to die to send you to the Nexus, and then I died like one other time off of some enemies. I lost track of where my health was or whatever. But then I like played through and beat Phalanx on the first attempt, and was like, I was like, oh, like, did I get good in the last 4 years? And then I want to say the Tower Knight being the next boss, like, only took like, when I got to him, it only took me 2 or 3 tries to beat him. It was getting to him that I died, a handful of times, be it from the hounds that Cameron loved taunting me with, that the dogs were killing me, or
that was great.
A couple times I just like mistimed the run, and so the dragon fire just like burned me to a crisp. Or the blue knights at the end of like that like section just were really good at screwing me up in a turn or two. But the fact that like picking the royalty class, which everybody kind of said like this is the way to go for beginner players,
your first time,
apart from Alex O'Neill, who was like, no, play Temple Knight, and he threw that at me like the night before the stream. I was like, I think I'm gonna stick with the original game plan of playing as royalty.
It's smart. Temple Knight, Alex has an affinity for Temple Knight.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, like, doing a little bit of research, it was in the like, these are the 3 classes we recommend for beginners, either the royalty, knight, or Temple Knight were the way to go. And Temple Knight, like, the argument for Temple Knight of like, hey, it has a healing spell. I was like, okay, well, that, especially by the end of my stream, I was like, I really want a fucking healing spell, because I didn't have any grass anymore. Would have come in super handy. But but yeah, so Tower Knight I took down pretty quickly and pretty easily. I feel like I didn't keep track of my deaths this time around, but going up against them and then up through the armor spider, which I also beat in a couple attempts, ended up like I probably only had like I was probably at under 30 deaths by that point. And then it was getting the confines of like the prison area, that's where I started just eating it and getting really lost and not knowing where to go. Like again, that was the one that really started to break me, was just like I don't know where I'm supposed to go, and if I do know where I'm supposed to go, I don't know how to get there because this whole thing looks the same. And everybody being like, "Oh, level design in these games is a phenomenal." I was like, "This is not phenomenal level design. This is Halo 1 nightmarish level design of like I don't know where I'm supposed to go because it all looks like the same nothingness." So that's where I started to get really frustrated, and eventually made it to the boss of that one, and tried them, and was like, "Okay, this is I don't want to have to go find my way back to that boss again right now. So let me try and like bounce out to a couple of other areas and try a couple other things," and just ended up getting frustrated to the point where I was just I'm done. I quit. I quit out of it. But after getting some sleep, I was like, okay, this is a game I'm not opposed to sticking with. But I'm not going to do it on stream. It is something I'm gonna look up guides to figure out where the hell I'm supposed to be going next, what the recommendations are, where I can go farm grass, so I can go into combat, overpowered and all that stuff. And that's not going to make for compelling streaming, but I will, I'm strongly considering sticking with it to try and finish it out, because it was. For the most part, I was having a good time with it, up to that point of just like not knowing where I was supposed to go. And again, like the only reason I knew remotely where I was supposed to go at some of those points is because Angel was like in the chat being like, "No, go talk to this guy, or go here, go there." And
you'll get a good guide, and it'll supplant that for
exactly.
you.
Yeah, a guide will help me out in that same kind of vein, because I definitely will never have the patience to try and like find my own way through that stuff, because it is so just like none of it. We talked about Broken Age in our last podcast and how obtuse some of those puzzle solutions are. Like trying to find some of this stuff around would just been like I would have never guessed to attempt that or go there or do that or whatever. So
Yep.
I don't have anywhere near the patience needed for that kind of thing, but the
okay.
minute-to-minute combat of it was fun enough that I'm interested in continuing to kind of feel it out. Maybe play around with some other weapon types, because really I stuck with my rapier from the beginning and just kind of was like point-to-point stabby the whole time, or attacking from a range. Again, going back to like I liked being able to start with the royalty class and having that magic spell that I could off a whole bunch of like the lower level enemies from a distance, one hit kill or a couple hits or whatever, and take them out before they got close enough to like, because I'm still really bad at the parrying side of things. And again, going off of Valhalla is in some ways a similar control scheme, and in other ways a very different control scheme. And having 80 hours of Valhalla under my belt going in to Demon Souls, I was pushing the wrong buttons all the time, and that was being a whole other element of frustrating. But overall, like I liked my time with Demon Souls more than I liked my time with Bloodborne, even if I couldn't last 8 hours with Demon Souls, let alone 24 hours of Bloodborne. But that was also just like, I'm not going to put myself through this if I'm having a bad time like I did 4 years ago with Bloodborne. So let me walk away from it now and still be in a position where I'm interested in coming back to the game, as opposed to walking away from it and uninstalling it and just cracking the disc in two.
There you go.
So yeah,
I
did
just have
not
one
do that.
thing I have.
Yeah.
I just have one thing I have to say, Trevor, and it's this.
I thought I had it all together, but I was led astray the day you walked away.
I don't think you realize how choppy your audio is. I'm only hearing like every other
Ladies
second.
and gentlemen, we got him.
The audio of this
I don't
is
know
not
what
working
song that is.
at all, Cameron. So drop your
It'll work for the
bit.
recorded podcast.
Drop your bit because you're so choppy and the like maybe it'll pick up on the Audacity recording, but that gag did not at all come through in the Discord. So
It
heads
is
up
the
there.
original. It is the original, ladies and gentlemen. We got him meme.
That means
Oh,
that
okay.
means
Because we
thought
got
that
you.
was like a
We got
song.
you. You're in. You're in, Trevor.
that means nothing to me. But also, I will say the only honestly the biggest driving force of finishing a Soulsborne game is to go out there and say fuck you all to the 200 plus people who commented on my tweet that was an easy mode would not hurt this game, so that I can basically say like I got good, I beat one of these things, and I stand by my point. Difficulty is not what makes those games fun or enjoyable. It only does if you are an asshole who can only prove your self-worth by saying you beat a game that other people couldn't beat. And if you're that person, fuck you, I don't care. Because you're a shit person who had no problem like wasting a day in my mentions over that long after I muted that conversation. But you're also the
Specifically,
worst of
those
gamers.
people who.
Yeah.
Okay, so people who gatekeep the game
Yes.
based off that. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
People who
Yeah.
enjoy it because it's difficult and it's like a challenge, not them. People who gatekeep off of that.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
problem.
if you want to enjoy that game because it's a difficult game, that's fine. But if you want to insist that that game can only work as a difficult game and that it shouldn't, that accessibility or even easy modes, and I use easy mode as like shorthand for a variety of options that would make that game an easier experience for people, a more accessible experience for people. Fuck you. Yeah. Those people are the people that like have no, like they've never, I mean my whole tweet was basically like, you will never be able to convince me that an easy mode wouldn't make those games better, and nobody ever did. Like the arguments they all made were all just nonsense bullshit arguments that are the same ones we hear every time the conversation comes up. And so yeah, it was just like, no, you're like, every one of them boils down to you want to experience this thing and not let other people experience it because you think somehow that will weaken your own experience, and you're wrong. I mean, well,
Doesn't.
you
You're
might
wrong.
not be wrong, but if you are right, it's for the wrong reasons. It's because you're putting the wrong
Yeah.
value on games. Like gaming should be for as many people as it can be. And
Gaming, This is part of like, and I wanted to talk to you about this because this is also part of like what my article that I'm writing is about. This piece that I'm writing is very much based off of the idea and like fundamental core of it is that like I'm just gonna put this out here again. Once again, if you are gatekeeping, you are wrong.
yeah,
Period.
Mhm.
Gatekeeping.
Unless that's your literal job in life, like you manage a gate.
Oh, like
and have
you
to
man
let
a
people
gate
through.
as
Like,
security,
you're a
and you can't just let
gatekeeper.
everybody through. Yeah,
Yeah.
here's the thing though. A lot of those people suck too. So there you go.
I'll give you that.
Yes,
know.
I am coming to visit my
All
aunt,
right.
and I have to go through this gate anyway.
all right.
But to my point
Sorry
is that
to
if you
the
gatekeep,
poor
you're
security guard who's listening to this at a parking garage on their boring ass day, just because they're trying to make a buck. But yeah,
That's not who I was talking about. But
I
anyway,
know,
I'm talking about
I know.
the old racists who sit at the gate to gated communities that are like, you drive a beat up car, you're not allowed in here. It's
Oh
like,
yeah, well,
fuck you.
I mean, like, yeah, fuck gated communities and all that stuff too. But yeah, no,
period.
my immediate thought of like actual literal gatekeepers are like the toll booth worker or something like that. Or,
Oh, yeah, no,
or the
they're-
guy
those
working
poor
the
fellas,
gate at a parking
fellas.
garage or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Where they're likely to
like,
listen to a podcast like this.
Yeah. But I will. Yeah. I mean, like, we've had a little bit of a conversation around the idea of your piece, and I look forward to sitting down with it eventually when you've got it kind of ready to present. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on the thing, and so it is very much in the same way that Colin Moriarty used to talk about the idea that he played through Assassin's Creed 2 and got the platinum trophy for it just to say, fuck you all, this isn't a good game. Like my argument isn't fuck you all, Demon Souls isn't a good game. Like even in my 8 hours, and albeit like a frustrating end to those 8 hours, I can see that it is a good game. I can see it has fun elements and there's great design to it. But I don't think that experience would be hampered by, hey, maybe it takes a few more hits to die, or some of those kinds of things. Because people would even be like, how would you even make an easy mode work with like the old monk boss fight or whatever, where it's like a player invading? I'm like, you realize like they make the game as an offline experience, so there's already a solution for a thing that isn't another player coming into your game, right? So like that argument just doesn't even hold water as well. So
especially since if you've ever seen anybody do that fight, they have to deal with like I forgot who I was watching play it. Oh, it was Andy. I was watching Andy play it, and that fight literally people just spam that invasion at level like max level just to troll on people, just to waste on people and waste people's time and make it frustrating for them.
Yeah.
So like people who are like, how would that monk boss fight work? I don't know. In my opinion, it's like maybe you wouldn't have assholes like you guys wanting to invade and like just ruin somebody's day.
Yeah. Or like, I mean, like, hell, you've got we keep losing Frank. There's the whole like with messages you can like upvote or downvote messages or whatever. You could add that to like the invaders, where you can be like, yes, this was like a good fight. I had a good time in this fight with this person. I'm upvoting them. This person was just clearly being a dick. Fuck them. Vote them down. Whatever. But also, I want to say my favorite tweet that
it's also hard because it's a 2009 framework that they're working off of.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. I didn't.
And from what I gather, they didn't want to like change too much.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it's like they could have, but they didn't. Like they were remaking something that was there.
Yeah. I did. I didn't quite know the context for it. Like I knew it vaguely enough to get what he was saying. But I appreciated Patrick Klepper basically was like, about to face the old monk. Guess my internet's going to mysteriously die for the next 15 minutes. So I was like, yeah, and it like
that's
not that I ever anticipated I would have gotten there on the stream, but like if I had it somehow, or if I were to continue streaming the game, I would absolutely be like, all right, I'm going to keep streaming, but my PlayStation 5 is not going to be connected to the internet anymore for that section of the game, because like that's just doesn't sound like a fun time for me. So, but yeah, like I'm still of the mindset like it is now on my list of games I want to try and stick with and finish for Game of the Year. The big like unknown is gonna be how much Cyberpunk pulls me in and how much time I want to spend with Cyberpunk. Like if I can get back to this and maybe continue through it here in the next couple weeks before really Cyberpunk hits, and just kind of chip away at it, I might be able to do that. I am going to try and I mentioned this to kind of the team beforehand. I am going to try and still record my time with the game, even off stream. I'll just like record it and maybe edit it into Let's Plays for the YouTube if I stick with it. So potentially keep an eye out for that. But yeah, Demon Souls overall left me with a much better taste in my mouth than Bloodborne did. But also, I feel like it Demon Souls, I think, works as a better introduction to that series and that genre of games. So maybe, if I were to revisit Bloodborne, if the rumored like 60 FPS version of Bloodborne comes out to next gen stuff, maybe I will, after Demon Souls, boot up a Bloodborne or a Dark Souls remaster or something.
They really need to do that with Bloodborne. It's a shame it never got a pro patch, and then now that you're talking about the PS5, like it really needs a PS5 upgrade, even if they have to go in and do work to make it like a patch. I'm like, man, Bloodborne in like 60 FPS, 4K, and especially with like no load times, like that's a new game.
Yeah, that's the other thing I want to celebrate and highlight is the fact that like Bloodborne, you died and you have to sit with that for like such a long time while the game reloads. Like, while While I still didn't like dying, I did appreciate that I was back in the game right away, and I didn't have to sit in it for that much longer. I could just get back in. Sometimes that did lead to like, okay, I'm still angry from that last death, and I made a stupid mistake and got reckless, but still, like, I would much rather be playing the game than being mocked for dying in the game and then just have to sit there and wait for the game to let me play the game again. So that's another
for like
thing
a full minute.
yeah, that's another thing that I very much appreciated. The near absent load times of Demon Souls was a great touch, and another element that keeps me much more inclined to stick with it as opposed to if I had to wait for a good 30 seconds to a minute each time. Each time I die. It was also one of the reasons I said going into the stream was like, I'm not really going to keep track of how many times I die, because if I die at the rate that I died in Bloodborne, I will be dying way more because I won't be sitting through those load times. But yeah, ultimately, I think I was certainly on much better track until hitting kind of the brick wall that I hit. But again, with some guides and extra support, I think it's a game I can get through. Just not something with one or two people watching me get stressed out over, and maybe those one or two people are able to help me through the game or not. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on Demon Souls. Sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Are you able to call? Are you able to call in like AI or other players? Like I know like Dark Souls and I think Bloodborne later they added where you can like summon people, but it's like real people is like a summon that'll help you. Can you do that in Demon Souls? Did they have that yet?
Yeah, my understanding is it's in there. It sounds like it's a very convoluted process.
Okay.
That I was watching a Jimquisition video on it talking about it today, I think even, and he was saying like it's a little bit of an easier thing, but still they like Bluepoint didn't tweak it too much, so it's still way more annoying and stupid than it needs to be. But yeah, you can do that in like Tony Horvath from IP came in and helped me out through some of my Bloodborne stream near the later portions of it. And I definitely saw like that I was collecting items that the descriptions were like, summon forth a phantom or something to help you or whatever. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna try and deal with that right now. But yeah, there are ways to do that to help bring in like co-op support, I think. I just don't know, and I didn't look into, and that's not how I'm gonna play that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe it is there. So yeah, so I think that's gonna do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for joining me. Let's go around the metaphorical table with any plugs we might have. You can follow Cameron at RevCabot. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a great shout out to Snowbike Mike. He this past weekend ran a Warzone like small lobby. It was filled with a lot of great people, a lot of great creators, a lot of great members of the Kind of Funny Best Friend and Hype Nation communities. Included some members of the Game Attack team, as well as one Nitro Rifle, Andy Cortez. Just an overall great time. Every time I was teamed up, it was my first time ever playing squads. I've never played squad before. I only usually go solo. So being able to do that was just a lot of fun. Met a lot of people, talked to a lot of people. It was a great, wonderful experience. Definitely going to be doing more of those when he starts doing them more regularly. But it was a great time. Love that man to death. So near and dear to my heart.
He's got some real trash PlayStation takes, though. If you listen to
that was the best. That was the best.
Spicy Snowbike Mike.
Yeah.
It was so good. The takes were just so good. It was just so funny.
I loved hearing that side of Mike though. Especially because like it's like the X-Cast, he specifically I think even said on the show like he's trying to keep it like PG rated or whatever. Like for him at least, he doesn't care what Gary does, but he always tries to keep it very buttoned down. And so to hear him like shouting obscenities about NBA 2K or talking about the dumb PlayStation,
dude,
the dumb DualSense and stuff, I was like, all right, Mike, all right.
So good. Mike when he gets off.
he had me rolling when he was talking about getting into the open world NBA 2K city, and he's like,
Yeah.
"It's this GTA 3 looking ass fucking city," and I was like rolling on my couch. I had to like pause Valhalla. I was like, dude, he had me with that.
Yeah.
He's so good. He's a wonderful friend, an incredible entertainer. If you haven't checked him out, check out his streams. He started his own after years of people like telling him do a podcast. He's finally started a podcast. Like it took us years to convince him to start a podcast.
Yep.
Like, and like before he even started a podcast, he started the X-Cast with Kind of Funny. Like, Mike is he's a special human being, and I adore him to death.
Oh, I thought that's what you were talking about. Is he doing? He's got his own. He
has a squad. It's called the Squad Pod.
Okay.
It's the Squad Pod. The Squad Pod podcast. It's him and like the usuals, the Kevin A. Sex, the Washburn, the Maddox Jr. Like the boys as they are. Snow Mike and the Dirty Boys. Bridge Trolls, whatever kind of wanted. Like they've had many names over the years. But they're all one and the same, like just great guys, and yeah. Oh, massive shout out to Maddox Jr. who like
organized the whole
figured
thing.
out.
Yeah.
He organized the entire thing, because Mike's like, I don't know how to organize. Maddox like, I'll take care of it, and Maddox is like killed himself after like dealing with the massive server issues and getting everything put together for private lobbies. It's like dude is legit 100%. Love Maddox so much.
Nice.
Yeah.
You can follow Frank over at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give some love to, Frank?
No, I totally second what Cam said there. I love my boy Snowbike Mike, and even a lot of the other people mentioned, even like Andy Cortez over there streaming on Twitch, and glad to call them friends, and I'm glad to see their amazing content. It's always hilarious whenever I pop in or I see clips like on Twitter and stuff. So especially I can appreciate Snowbike bringing the hype.
Yeah, and Andy been moving his stuff over to YouTube now too. Been putting his Demon Souls, and that's like there were a couple things I knew to not do because I'd seen Andy's clip outs from Demon Souls. So like I knew not to like I was walking up to the merchant in 1-1 or whatever, and I was like, oh, I recognize this corridor. I don't want to just rush in guns blazing and just like slash through everything and attack the guy at the end of this.
So good.
Thanks, Andy.
Everybody's like, Andy, that's an NPC. And he goes, oh, okay, I'll stop attacking him. It's like, no, he's like, it's too late,
No,
Andy.
he hates you now. Yeah. And like I knew enough about the game to know that kind of stuff. I was like, all right, gotta be careful going through this portion. Yeah.
So
shout out to learning from Andy's mistakes. And then there was a point where as I was casting my magic, I kept saying like Expelliarmus in Andy's Snape impression.
Oh, so good. So good.
You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. Like I said, keep an eye on the YouTube channel for all the Let's Plays we're doing, not only the current series of my playing through the NES Classic, but I'm going to try and break out the stream from yesterday as a recording into little clip, either like full chunks or just like clip outs of like, hey, here's me fighting off against the Phalanx or whatever. In the stream went down at one point during the Phalanx fight, and I saw like in the chat at some point like Angel basically being like, stream's down, hopefully you'll realize it when you're done with this fight. And I just kind of kept, but like it came back up before I was done with the fight, so I don't know how much time I lost in there, but I can certainly
it wasn't very much.
edit those two things together. So so yeah, we'll get some of that up, and if I keep playing through it, I'll try and get more of those segments uploaded in the future as well. So check out all that stuff over at youtube.com/thatnerdysite. And then also I want to give a shout out to the day this episode goes live. Our Patreon early access episode will also go live that Cam, Frank, and I just recorded with Logan, talking about some of our favorite forgotten gems of the last generation of gaming. We each kind of went through 3 of our big picks and then a handful of honorable mentions, kind of celebrating games that were maybe not the top tier of our game of the year lists each year over the last few years, but like in the 6 to 10 range, and just games we wanted to celebrate that we love and cherish, but maybe didn't get their due in the day. So check that out if you are a Patreon supporter at the $1 above level, or You can check it out at the end of December when that goes live for everybody. What goes live for you, if you are not a Patreon supporter, is the conversation Logan and I had about TV series finales, good and bad. You can check that out for everybody today. So, yeah, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, like, subscribe, maybe even consider supporting us over there at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. And yeah, that's going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for joining me. Thank you for listening. And as always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.